Good evening. Welcome to DeFacto Review, a weekly roundup of news and current affairs here in Mongolia with our commentator, economist, and columnist, Mr. Jawal DeFacto. Good evening.
Good evening.
And I'm Anand Tumurtagal. We're live on Facebook and on MNB World, and you can join in the conversation on Twitter with the hashtag Jargal_DeFacto. Today in our program, results of the special fund inspection that have been presented. Was it right for the finance ministry to conduct this examination? The government will not renew the accreditation of some universities and shutting down some private universities. Will this help the education sector in Mongolia? Reports of Erdenes Tavan mines are presented. Erdenes Tavan mines have talked about doing an IPO for years. Now they express they will do an IPO with the help of the foreign investors. Is Mongolia too reliant on foreign consultancy? All that and more in today's program. On Wednesday, the Ministry of Finance presented the examination results of the special funds. The Ministry of Finance gave some serious insights about the results of the examination. For example, some loans from one of the special funds were repaid with the loan with another special fund. And there were some incidents of one business have taken two loans from two different funds. So basically the finance ministry conducted this examination and not a third party. Do you believe in the examination results of the ministry?
Well, it's better than nothing.
Okay.
There is a state audit committee in the country, but that is not working very properly. The head of that state auditing committee himself was taking a discount credit from the fund for supporting small medium enterprises. Mm-hmm. So that just shows the credibility of that agency. So in the absence of any credible agency, the Minister of Finance had to do that auditing itself. They did, but unfortunately the Minister of Finance who announced about the exam, about this check or audit, said that the results will be announced only next week, after he's had proper discussions of the cabinet member. Here's the questions. Why he would not announce straight to us what was his result of his audience? Why he's waiting for a whole week? The cabinet and the audience, the people should receive this kind of information at the same time.
Yes.
Well, now, secondly, this very fact shows that one of the important of two pillars of democracy, one is election, the other is monitoring of the power. That is missing in this country. We don't have serious, reliable auditing system. So what is so far clear is, there are in the country 28 special funds working at the cabinet level. Yes. Almost every ministry has own fund.
Yes.
But unfortunately, that fund credit, loan, are not registered and not controlled by the central bank, which is the case of all loans by the commercial banks. So that's a big problem. And that's the place where the ministry and related to the ministry people, some of them misusing that fund, which was the case with the previous fund.
And they talked about there were like 319 entities have taken loans from two different funds at the same time. But the question lies that who does these entities belong to? Does it belong to some of the politicians or like the cabinet members? They didn't specify that. What do you think about that?
That's the whole thing. I will not be surprised if there are many parliament members are related to those 319 companies who had taken a loan at least at the same time from these two funds at least. There is even one company that had taken from 3 funds. And as you said, they were paying a debt of to one fund with the money of the other fund. What does it show? This, for example, the 4 funds he revealed was a fund for agriculture, fund for animal husbandry, a fund for auto road.
Yes, and education.
So those are not education. Those are not connected with each other. And why a company would accept a loan from each other? That very fact shows there is already something wrong, and we expect and we do wait for the name of the companies, because in Mongolia we have open data system where we know who owns which company. If they are coinciding with the names of our decision makers, lawmakers, then we will raise the same issue as we did with the small medium enterprises, which brought to the replacement of the speaker of the country. And also there is a new person in the cabinet secretary. So I will not be surprised. The other thing, you remember with the Small Medium Enterprise Fund, there were some 30 parliament members were connected, and out of which half, 15 members will be investigated. And now we have not one, but 28 funds. If with one fund we have 30, and I will not be surprised if we have another 20, 30 parliament members in these funds. You know what happens? If we have 2/3 parliament members, which is 50 out of 76, then the parliament will not be able to continue their work, and they need to self-dismiss the parliament.
Then why, in your opinion, why doesn't the Minister of Finance give the names of the people who own these companies like right away, though?
They did not give right away, and the very fact that he had just saying the facts is a little bit raising some questions. And what will happen within a week? Will they pay to delete their names? Or that's the sort of questions the public raises. But now the issue is more, what kind of mechanism we have to stop this kind of wrongdoing with public money, right? Certainly we need to recheck all these funds, of course, and but with state auditing, they should invite on the board non-state, non-government organizations to the board to check properly, and professionals, of course, invited to the board. And the fund should also help to increase competitiveness of each sector where they are supposed to be used. I just seen just one fund, which is a wheat fund. We call it wheat fund, and also it's called the fund for the agriculture, or those who is working on the land, on the land. A very interesting case, for example, from 2015 to 2018, this fund, wheat fund, so-called, have used 28 billion tugrik for purchasing of wheat, 36 billion tugriks for incentives to grow wheat. Okay, and out of this sum, the largest was used in 2017. 16.8 billion was used for purchasing of wheat, which is to be used for next spring, for next season, right? Very interesting. Out of the 16 billion tugriks, 54% of those money were used for 2 individuals who one owns 4 companies working in the field, and the other one is 6 companies. Puruv Bat Erden. He has 4 companies receiving 10% of this money, and well-known Lavga Chimbat, Kachurt Chimbat. He has 6 companies in this field. He got 44% of the money.
So the fund is not that diverse then. It didn't go to many
54% are coming from these two individuals, coming to these two individuals. Now the question is whether these two individuals, companies combined together, is issuing exactly a half of, is producing a half of the best wheat that can be used for next year, or what's happening with the remaining 44%. So how fair was it? So I'm not saying that it's unfair. Maybe they have been producing really quality wheat that they're using for the next year. But wheat fund, for example, similar fund with the state subsidies are in practice in many countries. Okay, in Canada, in France, in many countries, they support agricultural businesses which usually run with loss.
Yes.
And it is not profitable business, but the people need to drink milk, eat, right, bread.
Yes, yes. And I assume it's also very small businesses, right?
And thousands of small businesses are existing because of them, of this fund. That's why Mongolia, for example, every year nowadays harvesting enough wheat to feed us. But however, some 10-20% they say not enough, they import higher quality flour.
That's a
the
shame.
new Minister of Agriculture, Mr. Ozlang, nowadays, last week announced that they will import quite substantial amounts, some maybe 10 to 15,000 tons of flour.
Oh, wow.
Which that import is usually a very strong hit to the businesses in agriculture in Mongolia, in such a condition, in such a country. And thanks to those people, including these two gentlemen, we should thank them for growing the wheat, and out of which we are making our own bread.
Yes.
And it's very important, strategic, of course, food.
Yes.
Mongolians cannot survive without bread and flour. So this is something where we need to discuss issues and to make more transparent. And I hope next week we will learn more so that we have more transparency, because it is a democratic country.
Yes. So to sum it up, do you think the government should continue with these special funds, or should they just shut all the special funds down?
The fund itself, if it works as like credit distributor, then it should go through for that we have a special bank in Mongolia, State Development, no, it's called Bank of Development of Mongolia, Mongolian Bank of Development, MBD. That bank, because it's bank, they have certain requirements, how to disperse credit and how to get them paid back. They have own procedure by law that they can overtake the assets that they are given as a collateral, the loan. So that mechanism is to work.
Okay, then let's move on to our next topic. Last week, the Ministry of Education declared it will not give accreditations to some of the universities. There have been many talks of proposals of shutting down these private universities, but nothing has been reached, and there have been universities that were not up to standards. And is it right to close down these universities? Shouldn't this sector be left to the free market system?
Well, first of all, it's an issue of quality of Mongolian higher education. And that quality also depends on quantity, like any other things. And we have around 100 universities for the country with 3 million people. Probably we are number one in the world per capita universities. So it's a time to bring more quality. Why? Because people, first of all, they prefer, if they have money, they can afford, they go abroad to study.
So do you see that our universities are not to quality than all these universities, though?
Many factors, not very good quality. That's why every year there's a certain threshold of entry exams. They keep increasing, keeping down sometimes. And this year, according to the new minister, is a particular interesting year. What happened? This year, 18,000 pupils, students, graduate from the secondary school, and they want to go to the university. 18.5 thousand, which is 2.5 times less than last year. So what happened this year demographically?
Exactly.
It turned out in the year 2000, the demographic, the rate of birth was different than the before. Okay, this is another issue because it was just after crisis, during almost the crisis. 1997 to all the way to 2000, we come through the economic, very severe crisis.
Yes.
Okay? So that might be one of the reasons why we have fewer students this year. So those who overcome that threshold, they usually go to universities, state-owned enterprises, universities. And by the way, out of the 72 universities, 16 of them are state-owned enterprises, universities. Those usually are more quality, a little bit better than quality, and people prefer to go to these universities also because they have a more probability of them existing after 5 years when the students come to the graduation than the private sectors, because this graduation certification, etc., that's happening every certain years, and I understand the certificate is given for certain years, and after which they go through again the exams. They should go through these exams. I remember there was a time we had even more universities. You know why?
Why?
Because many parliament members have created own universities, and it was very hard time, and it still is, to find a parliament member who has either the university or TV or non-bank financial institutions, unfortunately. And it creates a huge conflict of interests in those sectors. It's hard for private companies to compete with those politicians-owned institutions. As a result, we have less and less jobs, and people run away from the country to find some physical jobs in Korea, for example.
Yes.
Very unfortunate.
Yes. And but do you think that it's, as you said, fewer students are going to the university field, and or do you think it's helping these universities by giving them a grace, basically, like they will probably wouldn't have more students and they will probably shut down anyways, though, right?
That's one of the reasons.
Yeah.
They will have, at least all universities will have 2.5 times less students than last year. That's a big signal. And now I think each university has to pay to their quality, and better to have more quality graduates than the less quality.
Well, there have been talks of like cutting down these universities for many years now, and the Ministry of Education have changed their policies so many times of addressing this. Why? And experts see that there's a negative effect of having the policy change all the time when basically the ministry changes. Do you see that, is it okay to change policy every time a new ministry
Unfortunately,
comes?
it is not only in the industry like education, but in other industry the same is happening. With every 2 years we have new cabinet, and the new minister comes, and then the new minister makes new order. It is not a question of kind of stability of even staff. Unfortunately, our public service law is such that the people keep changing. As a result, the policies that people are coming in with a different background, different policy, and they change. In order to have stable educational policy, we should have stable policy. One policy they have agreed or petitioned for a long time.
Then why doesn't the new minister keep the old policy? If they probably know that, right? They probably know that they should keep this policy in order to sustain, as you said, to have a better policy system.
We do. We should do it. With long-term policy, we must have it. And I just was wondering how you can do better long-term, stable, high-performing education system. Singapore is a good example. It's about this almost a little bit more than us, small country, but for the last 10 years, this country is leading the quality of education in the world. Why? Just a few highlights. One, they have a high investment. They have, for example, everything in art schools, the canvas, everything is paid by the government. Second, they have National Institute of Education, this NIE, which helps to breed updated and skillful teachers who can best convey the knowledge to students. Second, the Singapore education system is very pragmatic. They not only teach theory or system, but they also teach them how to use it in real life. That's completely different than with our education.
But to play devil's advocate, Singapore is a different country than Mongolia. Do you see that?
No, education system, otherwise I find these things are very pragmatically correct. The third is the meritocracy.
Meritocracy, yes.
Their education system is based also on meritocracy, like their public service. So the best goes to the public service where they have a good salary. Here in this country, not the best goes to public service. Those who is serving some political party leaders go to the public service, yes. Unfortunately, all the way to the level of departments. Not based on the merit, they're based on the loyalty to somebody. The fourth I especially want to highlight is they have a supplementary education system where the students can choose from several classes. For example, there is a class called Citizenship and Character Education, where the students learn values and skills that need for daily life.
Mongolia doesn't seem to have that, right?
They learn to manage a relationship. They learn to have self-identity. Another class, for example, which is not happening in Mongolia, it's like school-wise we have one foreign language, right?
Yes.
In Singapore, they choose different languages, whatever, the third language course, but it is not only the language issue. They learn, for example, a French language person, the student, they learn more culture about France. So they are more connected. It's beyond the language, which is giving a good direction for possible his future career. And the last one is the use of IT. And they use it very efficiently. They ask students to search in the internet particular subject first. By the way, in Singapore, one advantage is all schools go in English. So, by the way, they send their scores of students to Cambridge in UK.
Yeah.
After they come back, they reconsider again, usually decreasing the evaluation of the students. So they're very high standard of education. Yeah. That makes that country also with higher standard of services, businesses. That's why they perform so well. That's why they have over $55,000 per capita.
Well, hopefully Mongolia will become like Singapore and have a better education system.
That's why we are talking all this about now.
Exactly. Well, moving on to our third topic. Erdenes Tavan 2018 audit report is out, and in the report, the joint stock company profit reached 801 billion Turuks, and it is unclear whether the company will distribute the dividends which they promised they would do. And the Ministry of Mining and Heavy Industry, Minister of the Mining and Heavy Industry, Sumia has stated that it was negotiating with external consultants to do an IPO. And Erdenes Tavan CEO stated that some of the projects will be joint venture with foreign investors. And my question is, what stood out to you from this audit report? And also, is it right for Mongolia to always be reliant on foreign consultancy all the time, though?
Two things. First, this Erdenes Tavan Tolgoi, which is the largest coking coal deposit of the country, which is in production, and the majority of this deposit is owned by Erdenes Tavan Tolgoi. which is a state-owned company. I was recently in the site, and two things to say about the company. They are producing coal there in the site, in the mine, and then they load the coal on trucks. 15,000 trucks are on the same road from three companies to the southern border.
To China.
But this road can accommodate and could be sufficient enough to have, without long queue, which is now, through the border, if they were 3 times less. Now it's 15,000 trucks. There should be 5,000 trucks, then there should be no queue at the border. Why? Because Erdenes Tavan Tolgoi is not responsible for this transportation. Erdenes Mongolia, it turned out, and Erdenes Mongolia bought the road, asphalt road, from MCS with the money of Development Bank, 170 billion Tugrik, which they don't pay back up to now, making a bad loan category of the Development Bank. Though they are using the road, they're getting paid from the 15,000 trucks, they're paid. Yes. But they're not paying to the Development Bank.
Is this a state-owned company, though?
Erdenes Mongolia is the owner of all 15 to 20 state-owned companies, father company, like the largest mining company in Mongolia. And they own the road, but actually the road is used by companies that are taking coal from the Tavan Tolgoi, Erdenes Tavan Tolgoi. So it's a matter of restructuring this loan to the right entity, which is not happening somehow, first. Second, because they are just selling at the site, they are not responsible for the transportation. That's why the huge queue is there, and which creates huge queue at the border. A person I met, he said he's staying there almost a whole month, just go through the border only 2 times.
Wow.
And the remaining time, what he does, he's staying in the pit, the crew pit of the truck, and living there. And there is no proper living conditions. And how can the whole country allow 15,000 their own citizens in living in such miserable conditions without water? So this is an issue that the dust, the conditions is terrible.
But why have this? They see that there's a problem here, but why have these so much long queues if they know it's a problem, though?
Nobody cares.
Nobody cares?
Nobody cares. And that's why these people are staying there. It's impossible. It's impossible. And Tavan Tolgoi mine, before they go to international capital, the capital market, they should take care of this part. They should have responsibility for whole value chain of production, transportation, and sales. Otherwise, nobody is responsible for this transportation. It creates human problem, disaster, and creates environmental disaster.
So that they're bad management then?
So without solving these issues, they're going to the international capital market. And for that, they say 800 billion Tugriks profit this year. And out of this 800, 480 billion will invest this year new. But more than half of this investment goes to the consulting company, which probably will tell the same things what I am saying now, but I am saying it free. So let them use that. So there are things, they need to prepare.
Well, unfortunately, that's all the time. Well, unfortunately, that's all the time we have for today, dude. And I would like to thank Mr. Gerald DeFacto for his comments. And this has been Gerald DeFacto. I will see you next week on MAB World.
Thank you very much for spending this time with us. One is the Fund of Future.